Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Sandra with PRC. I want to welcome everybody to our first live webinar. Um, First of all, thank you for joining us today, taking the time to join us today. We have Patty as a guest speaker. Maybe you guys are already familiar with her. You want to introduce yourself, Pat?
Hi. My name's Patty Widget. I am with Widget's Way. It's not my real name, but I worked in a law firm evicting people for quite some time, so I do have to have a sense of security in my own life. Tenants don't like me either, you guys. Just want to talk to you today about evictions and things of that nature. And please, if you have questions, type them in that question field and we'll try to answer them as we go along. It works better for us. Works better for me anyway. I am blonde at the end of the day. And if you wait till the end to ask me your questions, sometimes it takes me a while to get back on track. So just to tell you guys a little bit about me, I've been in the industry since the 90s. Don't age me, please. I started as vacation property management, went into that aspect of the field, and then immediately jumped into traditional property management, mostly single family residence, climbed up the ladder, corporate America, regional property manager, for a very large corporation, and then I went to go work for a law firm. So just to give you guys a little bit of history, I went through all of that on my own, and now I've started Widget's Way as a property management consulting firm to share my knowledge with others so that they don't have to learn the hard way through blood, sweat, and tears. So with that being said, again, please feel free to ask questions. I know today we're going to talk about a few things regarding evictions right now and the uncertainties in front of us with COVID-19. Just so everybody's clear, this has never happened before. I know, tell you something you don't already know. A lot of this is evolving and coming about as it goes forward. So it's extremely difficult for us to say how it's going to play out or what exactly is going to happen because this has never happened before. We don't know. I know that statistically when this first started with COVID-19 and we started seeing the concerns come about, our rents were being paid. 95% of the state of California paid their rent in April and in May, and in June that number went down to 93%. It stated about 93% for July, and then August hit, and whammo, we're getting less rents. Now we're starting to see the impact. Now our numbers jumped from the 90% down to the 70%. My thinking is because they cut that unemployment pay in COVID, but what do I know? I'm just a blonde, right? So they've extended the eviction moratorium again. Now we're looking at September, end of September. And I'm trying to be very realistic when I tell you guys we're not even opened up yet. The state isn't open yet. So until they open, my guess is that order to shelter in place and that eviction moratorium is going to keep getting extended, okay, until the state can reopen. So stop panicking every time you hear they extended it another 30 days. They're going to keep doing that as long as the state's locked down. How can you expect somebody to pay their rent if they can't go to work? Just saying. Okay, makes sense? We need to take ourselves out of some perceptions and put ourselves in other perceptions so that we get a better understanding of what's happening. There's a lot of protections for tenants out there, a lot, and not a lot for us as landlords. I also own investment property. I have skin in the game. I feel you, okay? I have blood, sweat, and tears invested in this myself, along with some money. You know, it's not fun. One of my tenants did have COVID. We've worked through that, got past that. We're up to date on rents and things are moving forward. Had a little hiccup again this month, but it's all taken care of now. So the more understanding you are with your tenants about them not being able to pay the rent, the better you look, okay? And we're required to do this anyway. So my question becomes, when we start about the rent not being paid, we look bad. Don't do that. I don't want you guys inviting lawsuits to your door. Okay, I don't like them. I really don't. So we don't want to encourage people or make people feel that we're strong-arming them or forcing them or being another burden on them. We want to stay calm and stay as neutral as possible. Technically, that rent that happens between when COVID put us on lockdown March 15th-ish until they lift the order to shelter in place, we are required by law, by a temporary law, to give them a COVID rent loan with no interest and no late fees. So if this time period lasts 8 months, at the end of the 8 months, on the 9th month, their rent for the 9th month is due, 1 month of rent. And we have to carry that loan for 6 months, 12 months, depending on what county we're in or what city we're in and what that municipality has written as a moratorium for the time to repay the rent back. So let's say we're on lockdown for 8 months, okay? 8 months of rent gets to float. Okay, we have to carry that for 6 months, 12 months, depending on what city we're in, so that we can, I'm sorry, this background is driving me crazy. I'm turning it off. Thank you, sorry. So we wanna make sure that we are prepared for that because we can't ask for the rent until the rent becomes due, depending on what the moratorium is in our city and or our county for repayment. Example, San Bernardino County is 6 months. LA County, 6 months. City of Los Angeles, 12 months. Okay, so it varies by city, it varies by county, just so you understand. It's very easy to look up what the repayment moratorium is, and our apartment associations are here to help us with that. Here's the, I have an angry cat, I'm sorry. So, it's more important now that we have an understanding that this isn't going to be sunshine and roses when it's over with. We're in this for the long haul, and it's affecting our economy. It's affecting the nation's economy, okay? There are so many protections for tenants and not so many for landlords. Example, so far we're hearing that lenders are going to give 90 days in some instances for repayment of mortgages that have not been paid during COVID lockdown. Tenants get 12 months, we get 90 days. I don't think that's keeping the balance right. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this, but it's always been that way. So we need to be mindful and careful of what we're doing and how we're approaching our tenant so that they're paying us what they can because technically they owe it. You know, everybody's talking about this tidal wave of evictions once COVID is done and over with. Remember this, once lockdown is released and the courts open fully, they're not taking any cases for the first 90 days. There's a judicial moratorium in place. So however long lockdown is, you gotta automatically add 3 months to that before you can start an eviction because that's what the courts are doing to us. 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, we're at 11 months, guys. How much is your rent monthly? How badly are you bleeding? That becomes my question. I'm a lot of things. I'm a lead-based paint certified renovator. I'm a licensed real estate broker. I have more credentials behind my last name than alphabet soup, but I am not an attorney and I cannot give you legal advice. I can give you my professional opinion in the industry based on my experience. I have went through a market crash before. With that being said, at that time, us as licensed real estate agents and brokers and so forth used a lot of cash for keys agreements in the event we needed to terminate a tenancy. Currently, we have an order from the government to shelter in place. So cash for keys may not be feasible. So I definitely speak to your legal counsel about that. Also, when that time arises, if you can do a cash for keys settlement, Once we're no longer on lockdown, it may be in your best interest to try to go that route and play nice with the tenant than jump into the legal system. We all know how backlogged the courts can get. Can you imagine what's coming now? And for a minute, please stop and think. It's not just going to be for the evictions that are getting slammed in these courts. It's the same court that hears foreclosure cases. Not trying to scare you. I'm trying to be realistic here. Lots of protections for tenants, not so many for landlords. Everybody's worried about this tidal wave of evictions. I'm more concerned with the tidal wave of foreclosures. To me, that makes more sense. Be careful. If people are offering, or there's a government program or a federal funded program going on out there, please, I beg you, run, jump. Don't wait till tomorrow to apply. Do it yesterday. Because once those funds are accounted for, the program's closed and nobody else can get in. You have a much better chance if you're sitting there to decide, okay, this loan or this program isn't for me, and to opt out and give your spot to someone else, than you do to be waiting here begging to get in there. So if you hear of something, if something does come about as far as programs for landlords go, I would get there yesterday. Don't wait till tomorrow. I'll share something with you guys. I actually screenshotted it, so bear with me 2 seconds while I look it up. I try to listen to a lot of legal counsel, both friend and foe, okay? Just because attorneys will argue a point, and I think Dennis Block said something great, so I'm just gonna, he tweeted, and I suggest you look it up. He said, the media and our politicians keep referring to a tidal wave of evictions. Here's the truth. There will be a tidal wave of foreclosures for landlords. Landlords are not entitled to unemployment or governmental handouts. Who pays the mortgage, the property tax, and the upkeep? That was Dennis Block, not me, okay? I tend to agree with what he's saying. It's very scary what's happening. I have no doubt as a real estate broker, I'm seeing all the signs. My mortgage lenders are seeing the signs. My appraisers are seeing the signs. A market crash is coming. Am I telling you the sky's falling? No. We've been expecting the market to crash consistently, like it does every 10 to 12 years. Well, the last time this happened was 06, 07, 08. We're there, okay? We've been waiting for this bubble to burst. This isn't news that has been hiding somewhere. I encourage you to be cautious and careful going forward. Use your best customer service skills to try to negotiate some kind of an arrangement with the tenant that keeps things even keel for you. My tenant called me this month, one of my tenants, and said, Patty, I'm not gonna have all the rent. Not until the 15th of the month. I'm a little concerned, I'm very concerned. And all I said was, send me what you can now, and we'll deal with the rest of it on the 15th. Do you know she sent me all but $140? It's the approach that we use with them that matters. When they think and they feel that we're on their side and we're here to help them and we're here to try to work with them instead of us banging our fists going, where's my rent? Here's a 3-day notice. I'm going to tell you right now, every time you serve a 3-day notice right now, what do you look like as a landlord? I'm asking you. It's unenforceable in a court of law. So what are you doing? In my opinion, in your opinion, are you giving them an idle threat? Get out. We can't get them out. The government has us on lockdown. It is not going to happen. We can't. There are certain instances where you can get an eviction done right now. You have to go in with an ex parte hearing. You have to have a hearing in front of the judge in order to even file the paperwork. You have to prove nuisance, property damage. It's got to be extensive for the court to order an eviction to happen right now. So be mindful of that. Take that into consideration. It's got to be bad, and I mean bad, and I'm not talking about non-payment of rent. I'm talking about somebody running through the hallways naked, screaming, the sky's falling, COVID's gonna kill us all, trying to jump out 4-story windows. That has to do with personal safety, public health, yada, yada, yada. It's gotta be really bad in order for the courts to order an eviction right now. So keep that on the back burner of your brain also, because we're in this for the long haul together, okay? We're not alone. So have a couple of things that I want to share with you. I know that the majority of you are landlords, and I want to remind you of some things. So you are the professional in this industry, you, the landlord. So you need to act like it, okay? And don't let me hear you say that you're not a professional. I'm just a landlord, because that's ultimately, you are the one that is ultimately responsible for that property. Period. End of report. You are the landlord, not your management company. You are ultimately responsible. You're expected to know the rules, and if not, and if you're not willing to put in what it takes to know the rules to manage your property, then hire a professional to do it for you, because you need to invest in your investment. You may find it extremely lucrative. I do. Okay? And what I'm saying with that is, if you don't know how to figure this out and you don't know all the rules, and mind you, all the rules aren't written yet. This has never happened before. We have to be extremely cautious how we proceed going forward so that we're not making ourselves susceptible to lawsuits. I'll give you an example. The city of Los Angeles has changed their municipal code to read, if you even serve a notice to terminate tenancy during COVID, you are susceptible to affirmative defenses and administrative fines. What does that mean in English instead of attorney language? It means the court can fine you as a landlord for breaking the law, and the tenant can sue the pants off of you. None of us want that, okay? But again, my theory is, what is that message sending your tenant? Here's a threat, get out. You can't get them out. The government says they got a shelter in place. We're forced to make this work, okay? We gotta find a nice common ground to keep things on an even keel so that we don't cause a disruption in our own apple cart. Banging on the door, asking for rents, asking for proof that they've been affected by COVID-19. I have a question for you guys. Tell me somebody that hasn't been affected. I'd like to know. We've all been affected in one way or another, in some way, shape, or form. And they're saying that the second wave is coming? I have a feeling we're going to be in this a little bit longer than all of us have anticipated. Prepare yourself for that. Brace for impact. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen to the economy, to the stock market, to the real estate market. My crystal ball's broken. But when you start looking at all the pieces as a whole and how its oiled machine is working so nicely, how long is that going to happen before our dollar has no value? Our tenants have no income, and our banks are now asking for the money for the mortgage. I'm concerned that evictions and our cause of action, once this does release, is going to cause a tidal wave of evictions, foreclosures. It is going to backlog the courts. So let's rewind things a little bit. And remember, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. I'm just reminding you of how things actually are. Once the courts are open, we all know when it comes time to evict someone uncontested, it can take 3 to 6 months. Depending on how backlogged the courts are, how backlogged the sheriff's department is, how backlogged these departments are because they're inundated with new cases. With that being said, now if we're expecting a tidal wave of these things, it's above and beyond normal. How long is it going to take for an eviction? How long is it going to take for an eviction? Honestly, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. My guess would be 12 months or longer. That would be my guess. Uncontested. Contested? Who knows? You have to work with your tenant right now. You're forced to. You have to give them a loan. You can't charge them late fees. You can't give them fines, fees, penalties, charge them interest for the loan. You can't do any of that. So if they took that away from us, which I get, that's what they did. And mind you, I have one tenant that hasn't paid me a dime since all this happened. And I have no doubt he knows what his rights are and he's just testing me. If that's not the only property you have, you should be able to function if you've done all your numbers right and you're dealing with a good investment. If you were barely struggling to make it when all this happened, I feel you and I'm sorry. Evictions going forward, in my opinion, and I am not alone, I'm sure, talk to your attorney. Ask them what's going to happen when I finally can do an eviction for COVID for non-payment of rent. 8 months of rent, and let's just say we're not in LA City, okay? 8 months of rent, I have to carry 8 months of rent for 6 months to 12 months after. We're talking 18 months of no rent. I agree with Dennis Block. I think we're going to have a tidal wave of foreclosures. The reality is all these people need to live somewhere. When I was younger, I decided either you get involved in the medical field because people are always going to be sick, or you get involved in the housing field because people always need to live somewhere, right? That being said, as us as property managers, I lived through the last market crash. I'll tell you this, you're busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. No joke, because you're closing out files, refunding tenants' security deposits. Banks are working with them for cash for keys because they took possession, but you no longer have a contract, so you have to close out the file. And then on this side of your desk, you're dealing with investors signing up new accounts 10 at a time. You're losing 10 at a time, and it's just this big awkward balance, and how bad everything is flipping in the middle. So you can live through it, you can make it through it, we can conquer this. Just know that it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen quickly. For those of us that are waiting for this so we can start the eviction, please change your perception. We're not going to be able to start the eviction on these funds for 6 months or 12 months from after we're removed from lockdown. I saw that somebody asked questions, so let me just check and see if I can see what that is, and I can't.
It says, all depends on how fast feds restart supplemental unemployment. August collections went well, but what about September? Hold on, Patty. We can't hear you. Hold on. Patty, can you hear me? Patty? Patty, can you hear me? We can't hear you, Patty.
For letting me know. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Somebody's, oh, good. I'm sorry, I did it, my bad. Okay, what I was saying, and I'll go backwards, is I'm not saying to you guys, hey, this is the end of the world. What I'm saying, I've been through this before as far as markets crashing, foreclosures. It can be a great time if you're in line and ready to invest. If you're holding, you can hold. There's no need to panic. What I'm trying to get everybody to do is see the big picture here of we have so many people now that aren't paying their rent. It started heavily this month. This is when we're starting to see those numbers really come in of non-payment of rent. When we finally can evict, is it going to be evictions or are we going to be dealing with foreclosures? I don't know. All I know is if you guys prepare for the worst and hope for the best, we have a better chance of having a good foundation that we can stand on and ride through this storm with, okay? So that's my theory, is prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and we'll all come out shining at some point or another. Some of the other things that I want to teach you guys today is, and we can go into depth and detail about the process and the procedure of an eviction if that's the way you choose, but I wanted to talk more about building that relationship with your tenant, having that open communication with your tenant, because right now, in these uncertain times, we don't want to do anything that's going to cause us a lawsuit later. I'll give you a great example. In the first moratorium that was written by the governor, it said that tenants had to prove how they were affected by COVID. The second time he extended it, he removed that provision. The third time he extended it, he removed that provision. Why does he remove that provision? We've all been affected, and we as landlords don't need to be banging on the door telling our tenants to show us their bank statements. That's none of our business, okay? Stop. Here's me talking to you, okay? I worked in a law firm for 4 years. In the event that they need proof in a lawsuit, your attorney wants proof that they've been affected by COVID, they can propound discovery on the tenant and make the tenant provide that documentation then, rather than you beating on the door and potentially making yourself susceptible to harassment. We don't want to do that. We want to call the tenant and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm just calling to see if you have any requests for service, any maintenance that needs to be brought to my attention. I just wanted to remind you, I'm still here for those kinds of things. We're seeing a decrease in our maintenance requests. We're seeing a decrease in those things. Be mindful of that too, because here's my theory. Once they release the order to shelter in place and tenants owe rent, wouldn't a conniving tenant then tell you about the habitability issues in their unit so that they don't owe the rent? Just saying. Do I know they're going to do that? Absolutely not. Again, crystal ball, it's broken. It's been in the shop for a few years now. But there's things that we need to think about from other angles. If things that normally happen aren't happening, we need to ask ourselves why. In other words, why aren't we getting requests for service? Are the tenants scared and they don't want COVID being tracked in and out of their homes? Or are they using the system to their advantage and plotting? Hey, I'll tell you, I belong to several tenant advocate groups also, because there's no better way to find out what the enemy's doing, so to speak, unless you join them and figure out what they're teaching them. So also keep in mind through all of this, we haven't heard from the Department of Fair Housing yet. They haven't made an official statement on when is a good time to evict for non-payment of rent after a global pandemic. I mean, come on, this is me talking to you. But if the tenant has bed bugs within 6 months or calls code enforcement or calls the health department on us, we can't terminate tenancy for 6 months or it's considered retaliation. Why would we think that a global pandemic wouldn't fall in those guidelines? Just saying. There's a lot of bouncing balls that still haven't found a home yet. We have a lot of moving parts with all of this COVID, and everybody keeps seeing it's getting extended, it's getting extended. I'm hearing that we're just going to start seeing the second wave of COVID come through. With that being said, how much longer are we going to be on lockdown? It's a great question because once we have that number, a lot of our questions are going to be answered. Until we get there, we have to stay in a holding pattern. We have to play nice, the nicest nice we can be, because right now we depend on those tenants to give us whatever they can so that we can make that mortgage payment. Okay? We have to start thinking on a different level. If that were me and I lived in that rental property, would I pay my rent? how would I want to be treated by a landlord in these uncertain times? How would I expect them to treat me? When we start thinking that way, it does actually help us quite a bit more. Let me see if I could see the chats coming through. It all depends on how fast the feds restart supplemental unemployment. August collections went well, but what's about September? Here's my comment on how fast the feds restart supplemental unemployment. What does that do to our dollar? Our economy is not open. Just saying, think about the big picture. You can print money all day long, but what is it worth at the end of the day? Okay, so that might be another problem that causes a bigger problem for us, okay? Just saying. And then let me see, we have a couple more. I thank you for telling me you guys couldn't hear me. I appreciate that. If the lease renewal is due this month, do you recommend going for a month-to-month from now on? Be careful with your lease renewals right now. And this is me talking to you, okay? Make sure that you're not doing any rent increases in those renewals, okay? No rent increases right now, no termination of tenancy, no non-renewals. If you have a lease term that's expiring, you may want to leave it on a month-to-month, and I'll kind of explain to you how that works. Thank you, Joy. I'll read that in just a second. Usually, and you need to talk to your legal counsel because I'm not an attorney, but usually in a rental contract, what happens is after the term has ended, if you, the landlord, haven't terminated or attempted to terminate the agreement, and you keep allowing them to live there and they keep paying you rent, you now have a holdover tenancy. So those rules and regulations that were in your original contract apply, and it's just carried on to a month-to-month thereafter. Does that make sense to you? So you don't necessarily need to go through all the things of signing a new lease if that's something you don't want to do. You can't terminate tenancy right now. You can let them know that the owner wants to sell, but they're selling with that person in place. So we can't terminate tenancy. We can't give a 30-day, we can't give a 60-day, we can't give a 90-day, we can't terminate tenancy, especially if they're Section 8. That would be federally funded. Just so everybody understands, Section 8 is a federally funded program. It comes with federal rules. So whole different concept there, but be knowledgeable when you're dealing with Section 8 of what those rules are so that you can follow them accordingly. If the owner wants to sell, they're going to sell tenant occupied. And then the buyer is going to have to figure out what they're going to do, because if they plan on living in there, I want to say the chances of them getting a court order to evict the tenants are going to be small. Just saying. Remember, in order for you to do an eviction right now, it has to be a public nuisance, it has to affect health and safety, it has to be extreme damage to the premises, it has to be extensive, okay? Not non-payment of rent, not the owner wants to sell, it's got to be extensive to get them out right now. They have to be doing really bad things, okay? Or something really bad has had to happen. Fair enough? I hope I answered your question. So talking about keeping that balance right, just to go a little bit deeper in there, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I see another question from you, Joy, but let me say this part first. If we rewound life, my life, 20 years ago, okay? Just go back 20 years, and this were to happen 20 years ago. At that time, I was a single mom with 3 kids. Still am, but my kids are much older now. So that's why I wanted to rewind 20 years. I wouldn't be paying my rent to my landlord. And I'm being very honest with you, okay? I would not be paying my rent to my landlord. I'd be holding it in the bank. I'd be concerned about the future, not only for myself, but the 3 other mouths that I'm responsible to feed. I would have been holding my rent this entire time, and I'm being honest with you, because I'm uncertain of what the future holds. I will tell you this, I am a responsible adult. So as soon as the order to shelter in place is lifted and I went back to work, I would pay all the rent immediately. Once I saw the light at the end of the tunnel that, hey, this is gonna be okay and I'm gonna be all right. When you are your plan B, if plan A fails and you have a plan B and you are your plan B, because that's me, folks, you see things in a different perspective. You see things in a different level. So if you have someone that isn't paying you the rent and they've been a really good tenant, they may be acting from a place of fear, if you will. Concern. I would never pull one over on the landlord. I know I owe that money. But because things are so uncertain, I wouldn't be rushing to pay my landlord right away or paying any of my other bills. I'd be concerned of what's going to happen to me next month, what's going to happen to me the month after that, what's going to happen to me the month after that. If 6 months went by, I'd probably start paying some of the back rent with what I've acquired if things were still moving forward the way that they have been, with the exception of August, because they did stop the unemployment COVID hazard pay. Ouch. To give you an example, I believe the least amount or the average, let me erase that and start again. The average for someone that makes minimum wage full time on unemployment in California gets $105 a week. With COVID, that's $705 a week. If they're getting $705 a week on minimum wage and they work full time, they're getting paid more on COVID lockdown than they were when they were working. Okay, some people are not so fortunate. Some people are not getting that. Okay, I know that a lot of small businesses, if they don't have employees, they don't qualify for any of the governmental loans or funding. I know because I own a small business and I have no employees. So remember, they're human too. They have feelings too. They have things they're concerned about, where they're going to be in the future, where this is headed, where we're going from here. And we have to remember that at the end of the day, we're all human, and it just may be a concern they have. Then we have the other ones. We have those ones that are in our properties and they don't want to pay because the whole time they've been on lockdown, they've been bored at home, they can't leave, so they've been shopping on Amazon, spending their rent money. I mean, we know, we've seen the mail rooms. It's worse than Christmas time. It's worse than Black Friday. They're bored. They have nothing to do but sit at home and spend money. We get it. We have those folks. Those folks are researching on what their rights are, what the repayment schedules are, what the loans are. They're waiting, or potentially waiting, for us as a landlord to make a mistake, because when we do that, it's much easier for them to have that lawsuit going, right? There's more things protecting them than there are protecting us. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind, is a lot of lawsuits come out of something like this because there is no law. There is no law. So a lot of people sue for what's right, what's not right. They're going to make laws. We need to err on the side of caution and be extremely cautious. If you feel that you need to tell your tenant every month when they don't pay you how much they still owe, why not mail them a copy of their ledger, making sure that it has no late fees on it since March 15th going forward? Just send them a copy of their ledger. It's not a threat. You're not being strong-arming them. You're not telling them, hey, I'm the landlord, you gotta pay me. They know that. They know that. It's just a nicer way to do business. If you feel you need to give them a rolling total every month, give them a copy of their ledger. It's much nicer than a 3-day notice, I promise. Okay, I saw another question come through, so let me see what that is. How big is the chance that you think AB 1410 is going to pass? No idea. No idea. I will tell you guys all this. Vote no on Prop 21 because rent control statewide is back. They aren't happy with AB 1482, so they brought back Prop 10 that we defeated so long ago, and now I believe it is Prop 21, and we want to vote no on that. They're trying to put in more protections with the statewide rent control and add things that they omitted when AB 1482 passed. like vacancy decontrol. They want to say, right now this is not the case in law, but they're trying to pass it. So it'll be on the ballot in November. No on 21, you guys. What they're trying to do is add vacancy decontrol. What that is, simply said, is somebody's lived in your house for 30 years, paying $400 a month, and you've been real ginger about raising the rent, and now they're up to $800 a month, and they move out. Something happens, they're gone. New tenant comes in, you find out market rent's $2,300, you move it up to $2,300. Nope. They're saying they're trying to put that vacancy decontrol in, that you can only go up to whatever the rent increase allowed is if you have a vacancy, and not bring it up to market value. We don't want that. Okay, hold on. I see another one from Tracy. So just to be clear, an owner cannot sell their property unless the tenant is allowed to stay under any circumstances until they stay-at-home orders are lifted. Does this apply to the state of California, just LA County, or LA City? I'm going to try again because I can't give you legal advice. I'm not an attorney, and I suggest you talk to your attorney. I don't think a judge is going to allow an eviction to happen in an emergency case because of a sale of a property. What I'm saying is most likely you're going to have to sell tenant occupied, and then the buyer is going to have to figure out whether they want to keep that tenant there or whether they want to end the tenancy, but they're not, most likely not going to be able to do that until after the restrictions to shelter in place have been lifted. This is the way I want you to look at it, and it makes it much easier to understand. Usually we could do a 30-day, we could do a 60-day, a 90-day, 120-day notice. I know I'm a real estate broker too, so I get it. But the government has now slapped a moratorium over the whole state of California, stating that we must shelter in place. So how do you terminate tenancy if the government, who is the highest person on our totem pole, you guys, we are way down here, okay? The government is saying they must shelter in place. We can't terminate tenancy, we can't evict, they can't foreclose. I mean, there's a little laundry list of things that can't happen right now. So I would call your legal counsel and ask them what the likelihood of that happening is. It's probably going to be very slim. Just saying. Hey, good job, Tracy. I want to explain things the simplest way that I can so that everybody understands why we can or can't do something. And if you guys have questions, by all means, start throwing them at me. Let's talk about them. Communication is a big part of keeping this balance, right? And I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. If you look at your tenant relationship like a relationship, like a marriage almost. Well, I don't want to say that she looks fat in those jeans, but you know, how do I tell her that they're not very becoming on her? Same concept. You need to approach your tenant with kid gloves. You need to play nice, especially right now, because the things that we do have to protect us, those tools that we have, those 3-day curable breach of covenants, and the things that the tenants are doing wrong, the thing that we can go, yes, I'm going to get you, we don't have that right now. It's gone, okay? We cannot evict. It has to be bad, and I mean bad, for us to get an eviction. So with that being said, we're all in the same boat together. We're all beating on the same drum. We have to beat it gingerly. We have to play nice with our tenants. If they haven't been talking to you throughout this process, if you haven't heard from them in the last couple months, call them, reach out to them nicely and say, I haven't gotten any requests for service. Did you have any maintenance or anything that needs to be done over there at the property? Start a conversation that has nothing to do with the rent, okay? It's an area of contention, trust me. I know it's hard, but try to keep that relationship going as smoothly as you possibly can, especially right now. Hold on, I see another question came in. Let me see if I can grab it. Sorry, you guys. Oh, it was the, okay, thank you. That makes sense. Does anybody else have any questions in regards to evictions? Do I need to go through the process of eviction and how you need to have a course of action and start with your fundamentals as far as that goes, as far as having your notice and going through the stages, filing your court case, talking to your attorney, because I can go through all of that with you guys. The reality is, and I'm being honest with you, I don't see that we're going to be evicting anybody for the next year. I don't see how that's feasibly possible unless we're evicting for rents that were owed prior to COVID-19 and foregoing what was there. Might see some of those coming through in a rapid fashion, or monies that were owed after COVID that weren't paid. We'll probably see those start coming through in a rapid fashion. But as far as the COVID rent loans, I don't see us being in eviction court anytime soon on those. I really don't. And I know it's very scary because remember, I got skin in the game. I feel you. I own investment properties too. And it's scary. Okay, hold on. I got something from Giovanni. Let's see. Can you give us just a few examples of what has to be bad in order to evict? Would HOA violations and CC&Rs count? Noise complaints, parking violations? Do you think a parking violation or a noise complaint is substantial to make a judge rule against the government? If it's a health and safety issue is why you're evicting. In other words, the property is uninhabitable, okay? There is no kitchen anymore. There's no bathroom. That would be something that a judge would help order for. If it has to do with somebody being emotionally distraught because of COVID, I would definitely talk to your attorney because that might be something. Example, somebody's getting drunk all day, running through the hallways, naked, screaming that COVID's gonna kill us all, trying to jump out of the 4-story glass windows. That would be extensive. That would be a health and safety issue. But as far as just making noise and that kind of thing, the courts are less likely unless it is extensive. And I would definitely speak to your legal counsel over what extensive is. I've already talked to a few different attorneys about a sale of a property and they're saying, no, that's not bad enough. I do know of someone that had a sewer collapse and it backed up into the property and the tenants won't leave. That one is going through eviction court. But the Department of Health and Safety is involved, and so is code enforcement. That's what I mean by bad, okay? Because once they get involved, you know you have to pull permits, you're gonna have to go through everything, line up all your ducks, make sure everything's in order. It's gotta be bad. It can't be, they're driving me crazy, they're a nuisance in my property, you know, right to quiet enjoyment, forget it. Those are tools that we used to have. Currently, we don't. So we want to try to play as nicely with that tenant as we possibly can to either assist that situation or eliminate that situation. Again, I would strongly suggest that you talk to your legal counsel about potentially doing a cash for keys offer. I'll give you an example. Their rent is $2,500 a month and you want them out in 30 days, I would start offering them at about $7,500. Just saying. You look at, why would I give them $7,500 to get out now, Patty? Why would I do that? Because you could be stuck with them for another 18 months with no money. I mean, I don't know. Crystal ball is broken, but reality is all telling us, oh, I remember when evictions had that slowdown. I remember when all this stuff started happening. I remember how inundated the courts were and how it took 6 weeks just to get the sheriff to go lock them out once we got the court order. I remember, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, but they're saying it's going to be much bigger. There's going to be a much bigger wave, a much bigger influx of cases. So I see that time taking longer, not less time. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense to you guys. But just to go back, and I'll get to your question, I saw it come through, but let me just say this. If you guys are trying to negotiate a cash for keys agreement, I need you to know something. It is a real estate transaction. So in my experience, in my opinion, it must be done either by the homeowner themselves, the property owner themselves, an attorney, a licensed sales agent, or a broker, because it is a real estate transaction. You are terminating tenancy. So in the event that you want to go that route, I can't encourage you enough. Contact your legal counsel, okay? Make sure that they're telling you what to do, because they're the ones that are going to defend you in a court of law, not me, okay? I do not do that. So let me see what our other questions are. Can you still have illegal parking towed? Yeah, it has to do with parking, not their housing. So you could, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, okay? And hear me out, please, because yeah, you should be able to have the car towed, no problem. But what is that going to do to the tenant in there? Is that tenant paying you partially the rent, none of the rent? I mean, you need to weigh your pros and cons and see if that balance is right. If you have a tenant that's fully paying you the rent every month and you tow their car, what would you do as a tenant in this situation? I'd stop paying my rent. You know why? Because I can't. It's a jerk thing to do, but the reality is we need to play on their level. If they're owing you rent, that's a whole nother conversation, because I say, yes, tow their car. But if they're not owing you rent and they're doing everything that they can, why kick them? They're only going to kick you harder, okay? And then let me see what this other question is. And I'm going to start taking questions, and then I'm going to end this unless somebody needs something specific for me or from me. If I need to make necessary repairs to a unit and the contractor requires that all occupants wear masks while they are in the house, is that enforceable to the tenant while occupying their own unit? Think about that. Can we force the tenant to do anything within their own unit? You can suggest that it's for their own safety. You can suggest that while the contractor is there, they may want to go to the park for the afternoon or something that you know that's open in the area. By all means, don't tell them to go to the mall if the mall's closed. Let's try to be helpful here, not use our sarcasm, which I'm pretty good at. So sometimes I gotta hush myself. You'll see me pinch my finger. That's me reminding me to keep my mouth shut. I don't know that I would do anything to enforce, because tell me in their lease where it says they have to wear a mask when contractors enter their property. Therefore, they're not in violation of their lease contract. How are you going to punish them? How are you going to enforce that? A 3-day curable breach of covenant? We need to play nice, okay? If contractors need to get in there and they can't get in there because the tenants aren't letting them in and they want masks and they want this and they want that, I'm going to tell you guys something. If it's that big of a problem, put them in a hotel. Give them the daily rent credit. And before they return to the unit, contact PRC and have them come do a professional cleaning where they put in the fog and the foam and whatever it is that they do, because I'm sure they will tell us all about the services they offer, but they'll go in there and sterilize the inside of that unit. And then you have a third party mutual professional that went in there and handled that, so that it takes your liability and it doesn't totally eliminate it. But instead of you being this exposed, now you're only, this exposed. So rather than playing like this, play like this. PRC is there to help us. They're there to go in and clean our common areas. They're there to go in and make sure that we're protecting our asset to the best of our ability and making sure that our tenants are safe. One of the things that an attorney said to me, and I get it because I worked in a law firm for 4 years, is I said, yeah, what if a workman comes in and they bring in COVID and get the tenant sick? The attorney immediately turned to me and said, prove to me where the tenant got COVID. They're right. Because that's going to be the attorney's argument in court. Prove to me how you got COVID. Did you go to the grocery store? Have you pumped gas or used an ATM? Did you wash your hands? So it's going to be difficult for them to say that somebody brought them COVID, but at the same time, if their immune system's compromised, if they've been a cancer patient, if they're susceptible to this COVID, why do we want to expose them to that? I know if it was your daughter or your son that was living in an apartment and somebody was insisting on coming in and doing repairs and they had an immune system that had been compromised, you would be frustrated with them trying to enter and trying to enter and trying to enter, right? We need to start remembering to treat people how we would want to be treated in this scenario and look at the big picture of what the after effects are going to be if we don't. Okay, anybody have any more questions for me? I got nothing? You guys are all typing, I'm sure. You guys are all typing. Buckle up. I'll keep talking a little bit, but buckle up. We're not even near where this is going to come to a head or how this is all going to affect us. And we need to be careful what we're saying, careful what we're doing, careful how we're treating our tenants. I know we get frustrated, we get angry, and we're still trying to be the glue that holds everything together, as we should be, but at the same time, we're also taking the brunt of this. We're getting it from the landlords, we're getting it from the homeowners, we're getting it from the supervisors, we're getting it from our tenants. Us as property managers are taking it from every direction. Please make sure that you're taking care of you and keeping your head on straight, because you are the glue that holds all of this together. If you need to bounce something off of somebody, call me. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you. Sometimes people call me, they already have the answer, they just need to vent and make sure they got it out. I'm okay with that too, okay? I'm here for you. Let's work together, remind each other that we're all together in this. And I encourage you all also to sign up on my website at widgetsway.com. I do have a free membership on there, and for the rest of this month, we are doing Wednesdays with Widget for free. So it's basically a property management support group. We all log on, talk about our challenges, our problems, our issues. We talk about current laws. We talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, what we can and can't do right now. And it won't cost you anything. So I put that together because I wanted to have something that reminded us that we're all still connected, because I enjoy coming to PRC and teaching you guys and having a great lunch and laughing and joking. And I miss that. I miss all of you and us all working together as a team to get through this. So I've created Wednesdays with Widget just for that, so that we can all still get together, bond, make sure we're getting our questions answered. I have guest speakers that are attorneys that come and join us, other property managers, trainers. It's great. It's a great little group. We do that every Wednesday at noon. So you can do it during your lunch hour. And feel free, like I said, to get on widgetsway.com and sign up to do that. And when you need help from a professional as far as cleaning a unit goes, or sterilizing a common area, or if you're concerned and you've had a bunch of showings at a property and you want to make it clean right before that tenant moves in, call PRC. They're in line to handle those types of things for you and get that on board, so that you are protecting your asset to the best of your ability and taking your exposure that's always like this and minimizing that. So we want to minimize our liability and exposure through this, because this is where so many lawsuits come from, is when they have something that has never happened before. They're kind of making the rules as they go along. So if anybody doesn't have any other questions for me, we'll go back to PRC and hear what they have to say about their cleaning and sterilization services that they can offer and help us with. So back to you guys.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you so much for the great information, like always. And we do miss our lunch, our lunches after the class. And everybody, of course, you know, if you guys ever need us for any water damage, mold remediation, and like Patty mentioned, that the disinfecting services, it's pretty big right now. We've been doing a lot of offices whether that have someone that had the virus or not. We're still doing it. So just give us a call for a free assessment. Send us an email, whatever is easier for you guys. We're here to help you. I don't know if Sandra wants to add something to it.
I just want to give thanks to everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Patty, back to you.
Thank you, Patty, for like always.
Yes.
Like I'm done.
I think we're done for today. Thank you. Thank you so much.